Welcome to the Love Letters to Our Bodies podcast. I'm your host, Gwendolyn Mitchell, founder and CEO of Moyo Institute and lifelong spiritual seeker and energy worker. Here for thoughtful conversations about health, healing, and happiness by, for, and about Black and African American women. Disclaimer, the Love Letters to Our Bodies podcast does not provide medical advice. The opinions, experiences, and insights shared are for informational purposes only. Nothing shared in this podcast is intended to be a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Always seek the advice of your physician or other healthcare provider. Don't disregard or delay seeking it because of what you've heard on this podcast. Thank you. Are you ready? Let's dive in. Welcome to Love Letters to Our Bodies. I'm Gwen Mitchell, your host. I'm happy to be joined by Stephanie Mwangaza Brown, a licensed traditional 5-element acupuncturist with extensive training in various healing arts. She has a bachelor's degree in mathematics from the University of Maryland, a master's degree in acupuncture from the Thai Sophia Institute for the Healing Arts, and she's been practicing acupuncture since 2006. Stephanie's expertise also includes being a Reiki master, an herbalist, and an indigenous healer. Through acupuncture, Ms. Brown helps her clients create ease where there was disease and free flow of qi energy where there was stuckness. She partners with her clients to identify how they can maintain that free flow in the face of the challenges of life. Welcome, Stephanie. Thank you so much for joining us for this podcast.
Thank you so much for inviting me. I really look forward to the conversation, and I'm so thrilled about the work you're doing. I think it's just absolutely beautiful.
Thank you so much. You have a very extensive background. You've been a licensed health practitioner for over 25 years. What initially drew you into traditional Chinese medicine and the 5-element approach to acupuncture? But before you answer that, let me just say, one of the things we talk about in the Love Letters to Our Bodies workshops is the fact that we are comprised of these 5 elements. So please tell us about yourself.
So I became an acupuncturist almost by mistake. But like many things, it seems like they are mistakes. It ends up being exactly the right thing. So in this area, there's not a lot of licensed alternative healing programs. But Thai Sophia, as it was called at the time when I went to acupuncture school, was one of them. And it really melded so well with the Reiki training that I had and with just the whole movement toward energy and healing through helping people to increase their energy.
Beautiful, beautiful. I was really struck when I looked at your book, The 5 Elements of Life, that you combine your background in mathematics with healing arts. And could you share how your mathematics degree from the University of Maryland influences your approach to holistic healing?
Sure. The whole universe is very mathematical. When you talk to people who are in astronomy or in geology, they can't get away from the mathematics. We live in a very structured environment. And as a mathematician, I had some of my deepest spiritual moments in math classes. It was amazing, like literally altered state experiences while I'm working a math problem. And so that stayed with me. And as I practiced, I realized that we have a rule and we have a structure within our environment and our lives, and people can see it and use it to their own benefit. So what I'm trying to say is that it's all mathematical. It's still cause and effect. Certain things, you can add things and almost predict how it will change your life. Like, people add habits or they take something away and they already know it's going to change their life. So this is very mathematical and logical. And if I could say one more thing about it, that is that The five elements and the combinations of the five elements create everything in life. There's nothing that is on this planet that doesn't have the elements in it or has something additional to the elements in it. Everything has it. And so in a way, that's a formula. So it's taking that formula that nature has given to us and applying it to ourselves.
It's interesting you said that you had your spiritual experience while solving math problems. I've never thought of spirituality in that way. But if you think about Einstein and his contributions to the world, clearly he was tapping into something cosmic, something spiritual as well.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. I think there's something about deepening the order of things that opens us up to the cosmos. You know, when we go deeply into probably not just mathematics, but go deeply into almost anything. I mean, you even look at a sportsman, when they get in the zone, they're unstoppable. You know, there's this additional something that we all have access to. And I think in a way, it's our job to figure out what is the path, you know, for each one of us to access that.
Exactly, exactly. So your career spans acupuncture, herbalism, Reiki, and colorpuncture. How did these different modalities come together in your practice?
Well, a lot of times I kind of leave it up to the client because it's sort of like all roads lead to the same point. So literally, some people don't like needles. So we use Reiki or we use herbs. Other times people can be pretty inconsistent as far as being able to come physically to a treatment location. And in that case, again, we can use herbs, we can use distant Reiki. It's not so much that one does more than another. They're all just different modes to reach the same point.
Very, very, very good. I like the fact that you give your clients all of these different options that they can choose from. When I was looking at your book, The Five Elements for Life, Mathematics for the Soul, it connects ancient wisdom and practical applications. What inspired you to write this book after your years of clinical practice?
Well, I didn't intend to write it. Similar to what we're doing now, I was asked on various occasions to speak. And so I wrote various articles and prepared myself for presentations. And after a while, I looked at what I had and said, this is a book. And so I started pulling it together as a book. And then it just flowed, like the rest of it just kind of flowed together. And actually, it's the intro to a series of workshops. So the idea is to introduce the five elements and then to show people exactly how to use them in day-to-day life.
Beautiful, beautiful. Could you explain for our listeners how the five elements, wood, fire, earth, metal, and water, relate to our bodies and our overall wellness?
We have the five elements, which are wood, fire, earth, mineral or metal. So the African tradition calls it mineral. Chinese tradition calls it metal, and water. And also nature is in the African tradition instead of wood. Depending on where you go in the world, the five elements are always there. Even in Europe, you have the same five elements. And instead of wood, which is like the life principle, you have ether. So they're everywhere. And the five elements within the body are kind of apparent. So if you think about water in the body, you know that you have all kinds of fluids, different fluids in the body. With wood, if you think about wood and trees, then you have the sinews, you have the tendons. With earth, that's more the fleshy part of the body and the fatty part of the body. With fire, that's the blood, connected to the heart. Each one of the elements also has associated organs. And with metal, you have all of the various minerals and nutrients in the body. So by looking at the interaction of nature, we can draw a correlation to what would be happening in the body if the same thing was happening as in nature. Did that make sense?
Yes, yes. In fact, I'm glad you make the distinction between like what's happening in the African tradition in terms of names and how they relate and some of the traditional Chinese medicine ones. One of the things that we talk about in terms of fire in the workshop is the digestive system, the burning and breaking down of
Mm-hmm.
substances for the body, and also the bones and the physicality of the body being the earth, being connected to the earth.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, the blood and all the fluids, the water, just as you've said. And I think we talk about Akash or the space, the ether,
Ah,
more
okay.
so than the metal,
Mm-hmm.
so that there are clearly connections. And it's very interesting to think about the body in these terms.
Yes. And I think there's a distinction because when I was listening to you just now, you put certain things that I would classify as another element, you classified it differently. But it doesn't matter because there's all aspects of each element in everything.
Mhm.
So as long as you stay true to that particular system, you're going to be able to evaluate and assess. And
Mhm.
that's amazing.
Yeah, beautiful, beautiful. We also cover mudras to use to bring balance to those various elements in the body
Uh-huh.
as well.
Wonderful.
So you mentioned that your book provides a rule book to navigate life's challenges. How can
Mhm.
understanding these elements help people transform their physical, emotional, and mental well-being?
As I mentioned before, I'm a trained 5 element acupuncturist, and we spent a lot of the time, the training time, talking about and delving into the elements in their relationships. So you can completely diagnose someone, even today, diagnose someone, any condition, using the 5 elements, and then write a prescription that will help that person to improve, to heal using the 5 elements. And I guess now what I would like to do as I kind of go into retirement, hopefully, is to begin to teach people how to use the 5 elements to assess and create solutions in day to day life and in changing lifestyles. It's very important for us to become more and more self sufficient, if you will. And, we're no longer in the 20th century, we're in the 21st century. Most people can read and write. Most people are very intelligent and know it. And so it's like, to me, the medical system, our health system, has to begin to take that into consideration, that people really are quite capable of taking care of self and providing methods and systems that will help them to do that. And I believe that the 5 element system is one that can help to teach.
Wow, wow, wow. I'm thinking about color puncture and remembering the first class when I brought Manahar Crook and her companion to Maryland,
Rosemary Board.
Rosemary, to teach color puncture.
Yes.
And I'm just really blown away by the fact that you actually continued and integrated it into your practice. Many people are, I'm sure, not familiar at all with color puncture. Could you explain what it is and how it works as a healing modality?
I'll do my best. Color puncture is a vast modality. I guess it took a number of years for me to realize that this thing that we call energy, that we call chi, is not a single thing. It's not just energy that flows through our body like electricity flows through a wire, that it has various levels. And we access levels with various techniques. For example, the needles access what we call the chi, but then there's a biomagnetic component, magnets. There's a light component of the chi. So all these various methods access various levels of the chi, and this influences the body and the energy. So the color puncture is one of those. And it's a modern method. And I think as a modern method, it's built on many different healing systems that came before it, which makes it very powerful and also makes its originator, Peter Mandel, really a genius to be able to integrate all these different methods, techniques in such a way that they don't clash with one another. So I take my hat off to the people who use color puncture because, as I mentioned, it's complicated. To me, it's complicated. So the way I use it in my practice is I use the various theories that are provided, because what they've done is they have connected the ancient with the modern. Example, there's no such thing as a nervous system in acupuncture or hormones. However, in color puncture, he maps out a path that connects that ancient system that doesn't recognize certain components in the body with the modern. So that's how I use it.
Mm-hmm. I still have my light set, by the way. And I have to say that the reason I didn't really pursue the color puncture, I think it's really works well for people who have an acupuncture background and training in acupuncture. But for the listener who's not familiar at all, I would say that one of the theories is that it actually introduces light in the form of color into the various energy centers or the meridians through acupuncture points and acupressure points in the body. And there are these color diodes that are used for specific organs or to treat specific things. Is that about right?
That's one level of it. That's what I say. There's a lot of levels to it. Those crystal, those diodes are actually quartz crystal. And I think he uses like a natural pigment in each one of them. And I don't know, they've got the 7 basics and then they have grays. They have a lot of different possibilities for it. But yes, that's definitely one way it's used. They have expanded it so much since that initial training back in, what was that, 1998, something like that?
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I see they have an organization now called Esogetic Color Puncture Association or something like that. So
exactly.
Yeah. Well, thank you for that. That's making that more clear. I just did the initial training, so I'm thinking about putting the light in and really watching how the energy field changes, how one can take pictures of the auric field and see how balance is restored and how things come together.
Yeah, the Kirlian photography piece of it.
Exactly. It's a lot of things. And my personal preference has been keep it simple. Give me my hands and an initiation to let that energy flow through, right?
I agree.
Yeah. So you mentioned that light is energy that's 100% compatible with the body. How do you explain the healing mechanism of light therapy to skeptical clients? Or do you?
If somebody's skeptical, I don't really spend a lot of time explaining. I used to work at Walter Reed. That was really quite something. I was the acupuncturist there for a PTSD program. And the service people who were eligible to attend the program had to have failed 3 other programs, basically. And it was really kind of amazing how much the human body can endure. It was really, really amazing. And so these guys were coming in. A lot of them had barely knew how to spell acupuncture. They were getting yoga, meditation, acupuncture, and then psychotherapy and PT and like all of the traditional stuff. But they had these alternative things that they had to take. It was mandatory. And so, yeah, there were a lot of skeptics. There were a lot of skeptics. So it would be interesting. I would do my little 15-minute introductory talk, and, they'd be basically laughing, popping gum, and throwing little spitballs at me. Just kidding. But that was the kind of atmosphere, they were like, what is this? But I tell you, The best way to convince a skeptic about the efficacy of what you're doing is to do it.
Exactly.
Do it. And then after the first treatment, you don't have to say anything.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. It absolutely applies in healing practices that I've done as well. I don't even try to give more than introductory understanding of an energy healing or a Reiki healing and just say, yeah, get on the table. Let's let you discover what it's about. So,
Exactly.
yes.
Exactly.
So, your personal profile mentions that you partner with clients to help them create ease where there was dis-ease. What does this partnership look like in practice?
I find it really interesting that we're in these bodies and we sort of just expect them to work. I often use the analogy of a car. It's like we take the car, we change the transmission fluid, brake fluid, etc. Take good care of the car. But when it comes to the body, we don't do anything for it. We're getting better at that. But a lot of times people just run that thing into the ground. They don't even give it good food and good water, don't even get good sleep. And so when people come into the office, I think the most powerful thing that can be done for them, at least by me, is to tell them what their body's trying to tell them. So I do that by when I read the pulses, when I look at their tongue, I watch how they come in, I listen, kind of feel out their attitude, listen to their story. And then I sort of put that all together as best I can and deliver it. And often they rarely can deny it, but often it's a surprise. Things that they haven't thought about at all. And a lot of the things they haven't thought about are so simple to correct, like easy to correct. And so to me, that's being a partner. You want your friend to tell you when you have a mascara line down the side of your cheek. That's being the partner and being a friend. And so that's what I consider it to be.
Beautiful, beautiful. So how do you integrate your Reiki master training with your traditional 5-element acupuncture approach? Or do you?
No, I do. So I think a lot of what I do is to extract the principles and theory of a thing. So I give direct Reiki treatments. If someone comes in and they want Reiki, absolutely, that's what they get. And I use Reiki to hold the space, to stabilize the person while they're on the table. So though I may not have my hands on them, the attitude of Reiki, if you will, the mental aspect of Reiki is very powerful.
The Love Letters to Our Bodies podcast is sponsored by Moyo Institute Incorporated, a nonprofit organization offering heart-centered educational experiences, and the Lloyd Symington Foundation, which supports visionary grassroots cancer programs. You've developed Aya Herbals, a private label herbal product company. How do these products complement your healing practice?
Aya Herbals came into being because either I didn't like or I didn't trust the quality of the products that I was referring people to. 1, 2, people would always be bringing this, that, and the other thing in that they were taking and wanting me to give them the thumbs up or the thumbs down on it. And I'm like, that's difficult. So I began to sell my own products. I actually started with something called the antiseptic salve, which I had been making like for 25 years before I even got into Reiki. And so one thing just kind of led to another. As I found a need, I continued to make different things. And then once I became certified in Chinese herbalism, that spurred me on. And quite frankly, a lot of the things are things that friends and family needed, and they just worked really well. And so I just started selling them in my practice.
Beautiful, beautiful. Your approach emphasizes preventive care and the body's healing capacity. In what ways do you think Western medicine and traditional healing arts can better complement each other?
Wow. I really wish the integration would happen. And I think because of the way the two systems are structured that it's going to be very difficult to meld them. However, there's a structured organization that people should be basically know how to do a lot of things at home. So if you think about developing countries, people there know how to do a lot of things to keep themselves well. They know how to go out in the bush, find what they need, and come back and fix you up, basically. And I'm hoping that as time goes on, we here in the US learn to do more of that. The next level is to come to folks like myself, like yourself, who are alternative practitioners, to see if we can't augment what they're doing. And then lastly, if that doesn't work, to go to Western medicine. That's, to me, the progression of things. And that is the way it should be integrated. Western medicine would still have plenty of business, but unfortunately, that's not typically the way people think of it.
I'm really encouraged by the amount of information that's available now, like on the internet. This has been sort of like unleashing like this reservoir of information, self-help information, information about traditional practices, both abroad in Africa, for instance, and also in the Chinese medicine community. We're really at a point in our evolution as humanity where it's possible to know more about how to care for self. And that's really encouraging, I think.
Absolutely. I agree with you. Typically, when you go to the doctor and people have their internet papers and they have their books and all, that's kind of poo-pooed as, don't do that. I'm the expert. But quite frankly, there's a lot of great information. You do have to double check things. And it's not to say that the medical profession, we're not infallible either. People make mistakes. And so I'm thrilled when somebody comes in, they've already done their research and they have their information, because now we can talk about partnering. Now we can have a discussion. That person is actually putting something into their treatment plan that might not have gotten there had they not been so diligent about looking into their own health.
And I always talk also in our workshops about the body having its own intelligence, its own wisdom. And part of the opportunity for us is to learn to tap into that, to tune into that, to be observant about how what we are eating is affecting how we feel. For instance, many years ago, I was experiencing joint pains a lot, and I started journaling about what was I eating when this happened? And I was able to isolate the fact that, eggplant, and then researching further, finding out that nightshades in general, they actually release a chemical called solanine that attacks the joints. And so maybe this is not a problem for everyone, but if your body constitution is set up so that there's a weaker point on your structure, like in my joints, for instance. And just by journaling and paying attention, I was able to eliminate a lot of things from my diet. Had I not eliminated them, right now I would be probably in full-blown rheumatoid arthritis, right? So
Correct.
I think just really connecting with the body, paying attention to what it's trying to tell us, recognizing that when we were created, the wisdom was put here within us. And so much of what we have been socialized by has been taking that wisdom away or hiding it.
Correct. Yes.
So it's our job to reconnect with that wisdom.
Yes, absolutely.
So how do you address the emotional and mental aspects of healing alongside physical symptoms?
To me, it's all the same thing. So I spend a lot of times, I mentioned to you, I try to read back what the body's saying, because all of those symptoms mean something. And they represent years and years of us doing certain things to get there. Just like if you're, a bodybuilder, then your body shows how you spent years and years and years conditioning it. And so I'm not quite sure why we don't embrace the fact that when our bodies are hurting in some way, that they're trying to give us a message, maybe about what we're thinking or the way we're thinking about it or the way we're feeling about something or something that we need to release, something we need to embrace. We don't want to, for whatever reason, because certainly the information is there. People know, but we don't want to embrace that.
Okay. So, what do you find most rewarding about witnessing your clients' healing journeys?
Being able to be in someone's healing process is a great honor. And I know that for me, it was almost a life-saving honor because I struggled a lot with wanting to do something meaningful in the world. And so seeing someone do well as a result of acupuncture treatment or whatever other kind of treatment is rewarding from the point of view that it makes me know that I'm on mission and things are good.
Beautiful, beautiful. So, for our listeners today, if someone is experiencing chronic pain or stress who've never tried acupuncture, what would you want them to know? And let me just interrupt for a second and say that the first time I saw acupuncture was on television, and this was in the early 70s, I think. And I was like, oh my God, I want that. I want those needles in my body.
That's great.
I think it struck a chord of remembrance somehow. Go ahead.
Yeah, so it's interesting. I often wonder how people get to acupuncture. And most of the time, they get it by someone referring them, someone having a great experience, and then getting a referral. So I would say if someone's interested in acupuncture, that, it's fine to go out on the internet and to check different things out. But perhaps the best thing to do is to talk to someone who's experienced acupuncture. And hopefully they've had a good experience with acupuncture, because it really is something that can't be explained in a way. We don't quite know enough. I think we're getting there. We're close. But we don't quite know enough to be able just to express it in technical terms. So there's got to be a little bit of feeling
or like watching that session and just sort of knowing that my body wanted to experience that, right?
Yes, yeah. You connect it. Yeah.
And there are different types of acupuncture, and you're right. It really depends on, I think, what you resonate with, one resonates with, right? Because I've had the good fortune of having really incredible acupuncturists over the years and using that as a part of my healing process. And I've also had some experiences of people not quite knowing what this body needed, So I do think it's nice to talk to people who've had the experience.
Absolutely. That, and also interviewing your practitioners. I usually tell people, pick 3 or 4 names, call them up and talk to them for 10 or 15 minutes. And usually people can resonate and they'll feel comfortable. It's interesting now we're in the world of texting. So that makes it a little more difficult because you just don't get the acupuncture. To me is very much about person to person, not contact, but connection. It's very person to person.
I know there are different approaches to acupuncture. And for me, what I found most useful is when it's an acupuncturist that uses pulse diagnosis. And I would ask that question when interviewing, because in some forms, some community acupuncture practices, I notice there may not be pulse diagnosis. And so more just using needles based on what you say you're feeling. And that doesn't work well for me.
Yeah. So no, it's confusing to me also. Yeah. Pulse diagnosis, tongue diagnosis. The interview is important. Not to say that it's not important. The person's story is important. But those are the ways that you can actually get information from the body itself directly.
So, are there any simple practices from your 5 element approach that people can incorporate into their daily lives for better balance?
I think that's a little difficult without understanding what that means, like without understanding the elements. So I guess there's one thing that is a fail safe, and that is sort of if you do the wrong thing, the body's like, I don't need that, and it just throws it out. So I think that understanding each one of the elements, understanding the relationship of the elements, and being able to look within oneself and to see how the elements are flowing is important. And it's not difficult, it's not complicated, it doesn't take a long time to learn. But then now, once you have that foundation, then you can literally I call it walking, it's called walking the circle. You can literally go through the 5 elements, kind of assess what the relationship is between them, which ones are strong, which ones are weak, and then strengthen the ones that are weak and maintain the strength of the ones that are strong. And what I love about that approach is it doesn't have to be something that is difficult for a person. For instance, if your water is weak, you can do any number of things. Anything that strengthens water within that person will affect the situation without directly having them to do something that may be very difficult for them to do in that particular situation. But when their water's stronger, the whole situation is going to shift, and then they will be able to move forward in that particular situation.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. In your professional profile, you've mentioned cancer support as a part of your practice. Could you share your experience working with cancer patients and how your various healing modalities might complement conventional cancer treatments?
The way I've worked with people who are experiencing cancer is to honestly provide support, not provide a main treatment, whether that is the chemo and radiation of Western medicine or like a dietary approach or Gerson diet approach of the more alternative forms of healing cancer. Then the acupuncture comes into support. So, especially with chemo and radiation, you don't want to clear anything or you don't want to disrupt what that particular treatment is designed to do. What I want to do is come in and support all the organs that are stressing and straining to maintain themselves throughout that process. With the more food oriented and more natural approaches, then we want to look at what needs strengthening, because that's what they're going to be working on dietarily, et cetera. So we want to look at that and then also strengthen and help support that particular therapy. So that's how I tend to work with people with cancer, not as a main or primary type of therapy.
That's great. One of the things that we share in the Love Letters to Our Bodies workshop from the Ayurvedic tradition is mudras that help the body to assimilate medication or to assimilate food. And so again, it's providing a support, not a replacement for therapy or traditional medicine. And also, there's a lot of, it's so challenging emotionally to be facing a diagnosis that has the potential to be critical, that it's really wonderful for a person to be able to get on the table, to be able to feel the nurturing energy, to feel the flow of emotions being released, and to let the body come back into a sense of stasis, and well-being while they're being nurtured along this journey.
Absolutely. Acupuncture definitely does a lot of that as well, just giving people calm, giving people peace.
Beautiful. Would you say that of the various modalities that you use, have you found any one to be more beneficial or the most beneficial for, say, folks who are going through cancer?
I think they all have their place. And I think it has a lot to do with the person's constitution and with their desire. The acupuncture is very good for settling and for dealing with things that are more physical, like, for instance, pain, muscular kind of issues, things like that, nausea that come up. But also it's good for just balancing the emotions. Reiki, I find, certain people, not everybody, but certain people find it to be like being held, like being embraced. And so that's very helpful when you're in a challenging situation, not just cancer, but any challenging situation. I have a number of school counselors who come specifically for Reiki because it just kind of fills them back up. It gives so much. And I think that is one of the traits that's attributed to people suffering from cancer is that they're just empty. They've given it all away. And now they have to be filled up again. And so it's not just to fill them up. I think it's also important to help that person put boundaries so that once they get full, they don't just give it all away again. And so that's where the acupuncture has a component that's like counseling. So it's really talking with the person, partnering again with the person to help with all of that.
Beautiful, beautiful. And it's interesting you should say that because a lot of the women say that the cancer forced them to make themselves a priority. It was no longer possible for them to give, and, solving all the problems in the family, all the problems in the world. They had to really bring their attention back to self and to allow themselves to receive and to be supported. So that's
absolutely. Yes.
So do you tailor your 5-element approach to address both physical symptoms and emotional when working with cancer patients?
One thing to keep in mind, energetic medicine in general doesn't rely on particular labels, on those disease labels, that it doesn't really matter whether a person comes in and, they have a backache, they have a headache, or they have cancer. What we do is we look at the person and assess what's going well, what's not going well, and then design treatment around that. And the other part of that is you're dealing with the energetic medicine. So the way I think of it, the model is energy here, then emotions, then thoughts, and then the physical. And so if someone's suffering from cancer, then we're looking at a whole strand, if you will, that has to be balanced and equilibrated again. It's not separate.
Beautiful, beautiful. So you've mentioned using botanical interventions and bioenergetic tinctures in your practice. Can you explain how these might support someone in treatment?
Yes. Well, one of the things that's true is that even if a person comes a couple of times a week, maybe you get an hour or an hour and a half with them to treat something that perhaps took 10 years to develop. It's just not a lot of time. So the botanicals allow treatment to continue. So I think of it as you come in for your acupuncture treatment and we give you a big push. And then you have the botanicals that keep that momentum going until the next time you come in for an acupuncture treatment. Yes. Or other energy, any type of hands-on treatment. That hands-on, there's something about, again, that person-to-person contact is very powerful. And then the herbs are in between to magnify that and keep it going.
So for someone newly diagnosed with cancer, even though I know, again, we're treating the whole person and we're looking at restoring balance. That's really the objective. But for someone who's newly diagnosed with cancer, who's interested in complementary approaches, what advice would you offer about integrating traditional healing practices into their care plan?
One of the things about healing, another aspect of it is creating free flow. Just want to put that out there. So if someone has a new diagnosis, again, to me, the best thing is to talk to other people. Like they have these support groups and things like that. It's like to talk to other people and see what worked, because what works for one person is not going to work for somebody else. You have to be able to be 100% committed in a way. So I would say that the first step is to maintain hope. That's the first step. And then the second step would be to gather your information, be it from the internet, from books, from talking to people, because then you're going to get, if you will, the latest and the greatest. You're going to find out who the practitioners are who specialize in this, because every acupuncturist is not the same. So I think that is the best way to approach it.
Beautiful,
I don't know. What do you think?
I agree. I mean, I think that personal referrals are great. And really, I mean, if one can break through the fear, which is really the primary emotion that people are feeling after a diagnosis, and even throughout the treatment, I find that women or they tell me that what happens is that there's always this little fear in the background of a recurrence, even after they've been declared quote unquote cancer free for several years, right? There's always a fear of recurrence. And so I like to encourage people to have hope, as you've said, and to really begin to look at the life in a way where they can find something to be grateful for. For instance, gratitude is a really good sort of, I call it like a healing method also. But because so much of what happens when we're in the fear state is we think about all the bad things that can go wrong, that might go wrong. And we are moving from the present moment into the future, and really a lot of what got us into this circumstance, in addition to whatever environmental issues or genetic issues there may be, often there's also a past component of holding on to anger and hurt and those kinds of things emotionally that eventually show up in the body as some kind of imbalance. So if we could stay in the present moment, like just what are we experiencing today, and find something to be excited about or happy about today, I think that can also be helpful.
You said something about people being afraid of recurrence. And that's something that I have noticed. People will come in and they'll be like, I beat cancer. And then you may interact with that person a few years later, and all the things that they were adamant about and committed to, not all, but, the things that got them well, they're not happening anymore. They are not happening anymore. And, so I've gotten to the point where I don't play with that at all. I'm at a little soapbox and get upset and dance around the room and prance around and really try to get them to remember, look, if you want to stay where you are, you must maintain, the things that got you there. And every person, what they are, in your own body, what they are. And I think people appreciate that because, again, you ask about partnering, there's a lot of different aspects to that. So that's partnering with someone that you don't let them slide and fall off the wagon and say nothing. That you're off the wagon. Go get back on. I'm right behind you.
Exactly. And the women that I've met who are quote unquote thrivers are women who've actually incorporated lifestyle changes. They didn't just go through the treatment and then stop. They recognize that it's important that I move my body. It's important that I'm conscious about what I'm putting in terms of nourishment. And so they are consistent about that. Self-care is important. And I always like to tell women that self-care means more than getting your nails done and your hair done,
Yes.
It's like make time for yourself to have energy treatments, make time for yourself to have massage, make time to yourself to have some quiet time to reflect on what's going on in your life and how you're responding to it. Like all of those things are important to maintaining well-being. So we're almost about to wrap up here. I want to ask you about the workshop series that you mentioned at the top of the hour about sharing healing principles with both professional and lay people. What's your vision for expanding education about these ancient healing approaches?
Thank you so much for asking me about that, because I am very, very excited about it. I guess after I wrote the book, I realized that I kind of created a dead end, that you read the book and then it's like, okay, now what? And so I realized that it was important to take it to the next step and try to provide a way to employ the concepts that I put in the book. And so that led to developing the workshops around the 5 elements. And at this point, that has become a community. And so literally, and last week I announced the Fire in the Light community. And it's an online community where you can ask questions, meditation, information. The workshops are there, discussions, and it's hybrid. So for someone who is not local, they have that digital piece. But then for people who are local, there's also ways to come in for acupuncture, for Reiki, for, foot baths, chakra readings, etc. And so that to me is, I hope at least it's the direction that we're moving in. You mentioned something called self-care. And I'm like, the things that we tend to classify as self-care, it's great. It's part of self-care, but it's really done for you care. If you think about it, it's still done for you. And so the thrust of the community is to do it for them, have done for you care. But as a person grows in the community and gets more information, for them to have true self-care where they can still have somebody else do it if they want to. But if they don't want to, they know how to do it for themselves.
Beautiful, beautiful. So I'm so happy that we were finally able to get this session scheduled today. And I want our listeners to just know that your work is rooted in the principles of the 5 elements, using them to guide and help individuals heal physically, emotionally, and spiritually. And that you also assist the clients in reevaluating life choices, releasing emotional burdens, and reshaping thoughts and setting new goals. I love the title, Fire in the Light, as a community, and I'm sure that it will just grow exponentially. I want to just acknowledge you and appreciate you for your being and for what you're offering the world. And thank you very, very much.
Yes, right back at you. Thank you.
That's a wrap. Thank you so much for listening to Love Letters to Our Bodies, conversations on health, healing, and happiness. To find out more about the Love Letters to Our Bodies project, visit our website at moyoinstitute.org. That's MOYO Institute.org. Follow us on social media and subscribe to the podcast so you don't miss an episode. If there are topics you'd like for us to discuss, let us know. Remember, your body is beautiful, girlfriend. Love it.